Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the meeting. I would please ask the secretary to take the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Ryan,
Present.
Regent Balducci. Absence is noted. He is anticipated to attend. Regent Bloom,
Present.
Regent Gray Kemp,
Present.
Regent Howery,
Present.
Regent James,
Present.
Regent Japanin,
Present.
Regent McCarthy, Regent Porth,
Present.
Regent Santiago, Regent Santiago, and he is present and has not announced his attendance. Regent Stewart. Absence is noted. Regent Wright.
Here.
And our ex officios, Professor Blitz, Professor Sasanker. Absence is noted. We'll record her when she arrives. Commissioner Bartolomeo. Absence is noted. Commissioner Jitani.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Dom. Absence is noted. Commissioner Russell Tucker. Absence is noted. Chief Workforce Officer Kelly Marie Valeries. Absence is noted. And I'd like to welcome our presidents, both here and virtually. President Maduco, President Nunez, Interim President Smith, President Toro, Interim President Barron, and President Klonowski. Chair Ryan, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have one change to our agenda today. A second item needs to be added to the Executive Committee report concerning the consummation of the merger of Connecticut State. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt the amended agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The amended agenda is adopted. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the last meeting of the 2022-2023 academic year. As we put together another year behind us, I'd like to extend the board's continued gratitude to the CSCU community for their contributions and their sacrifices over the past year. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Holly Howery and Felice Gray Kemp for their many, many years of service and wish them well as they cycle off the board and pursue other opportunities. But we have your phone numbers. Just remember that. And your email. Morning. Regent Howery was appointed to the Board of Regents by Governor Malloy in 2018, and she has most recently chaired the board's Human Resource and Administration Committee. Prior to her 2018 appointment to the board, and while still a student at Charter Oak State College, she was elected to serve on the Student Advisory Committee as vice chair, and later that same year, elected by the membership to serve as chair from April 2016 through November 2017. And she did admirably, by the way. Regent Gray Kemp was appointed to serve on the board in August of 2017 and most recently served as a member of the board's Finance and Infrastructure Committee. She is currently Senior VP and General Counsel to Castle, a rental technology and services company supporting retailers, apparel brands, and the digital community. We will truly miss their contributions to the board and to CSCU. And personally, for me, it is a great loss because their words of wisdom have been most appreciated and admired and right on target. So thank you both so very, very much for all that you've done for us.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
We will miss their contributions to the board and to CSCU, but they're not that far away. You know that. Today, we have a number of issues up for a vote, not the least of which is the fiscal year 2024 proposed spending plan. Thanks to the committees, our ex officio members, and system office staff for all the work put in to develop the measures before us today. And I believe we'll hear about 2 revisions to that resolution during the Finance Committee report. Now to President Chang, Chancellor Chang, for your comments.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. And I I don't think we've voted on that officially yet, but I appreciate there you go. But I appreciate the time to share some thoughts and reflect on what has been an incredibly active and productive year. I have to start with NETG's approval of CT State's third and final progress report. This approval that we received just 2 weeks ago allows us to bring to a close a 6-year process that unifies the community college campuses into one singularly accredited institution. Already, there is a shared curriculum, fewer barriers for students, and reduced duplication. Guided Pathways advisors on each campus have helped to increase enrollment and retention. Faculty across campuses are collaborating, as CT State also established a new shared governance process created and voted on in less than 1 year, which is truly remarkable for those of us who have been in higher education for some time. I have to thank President Maduco and his team for shepherding this process through its final, arduous, and rigorous stages. It has been a long time in the making, but the team worked with focus and determination, and without that commitment, we would not be here. We also would not be here without the efforts of the thousands of faculty and staff who have been integral to this process since day one. Even when it was both personally and professionally challenging to be aligned with these efforts, they saw that this would not only help the community colleges chart a path toward financial stability, they also knew that this was meant to help students and would be a chance to evolve our campuses to meet their needs. I have to thank the administrators who have relentlessly pursued this goal all the way to its completion. Presidents Michael Rook of Northwestern Connecticut Community College and Mary Ellen Jakoski of Three Rivers Community College, your knowledge, experience, and leadership have been invaluable. Harry Kelly and all of the CT State cabinet members, campus CEOs, faculty and staff leaders, and so many others, you know who you are. Thank you for all you did for the campuses, for CT State, for the system. I also have to thank the members of the Board of Regents, both past and present. As I mentioned, this process started 6 years ago. It has been far from perfect. There have been many ups and downs. We will continue to learn and grow along the way, and it will not always be comfortable. But having been here for the past 2 years, I can say with confidence that the journey started with only the best of intentions to better serve students and to create long-term sustainability and viability so that we can remain pillars within our communities, serving those who would not be served otherwise. I want to thank former Board of Regents Chair and Vice Chair Matt Fleury and Merle Harris and all the regents who stayed with this process in your time. You were steady and you stepped up to lead, especially during the hardest of times. This goes for our current regents as well, who have given the team invaluable structure and guidance along the way. There are countless others across Connecticut, including Governor Lamont and his team, multiple legislators, business leaders, and community partners who have lent their support, and I want to recognize them. Ultimately, CT State is something we can all be proud of, but it would be disingenuous if I didn't recognize how hard this has been for so many people. As I said before, this process has not been easy, and we have found ourselves at loggerheads at times. I know that the people who work on each of our campuses across CSCU feel immense pride in their place of work because you love your institutions and want only the best for your colleagues and your students. And I want to tell you that we, Board of Regents, the administration, everyone across our system want those same things. I believe that everyone has had positive intentions since the beginning. We have not been great at communication at times, and things have not always gone smoothly. But we are committed to learning from the past, and we will continue to do our best to communicate, be transparent, and work for a stronger and better future. As we transition, I hope people will look to the future as an opportunity to create solutions together. So in that vein, let me recap our major leadership changes at our institutions. This year, Dr. Joseph Bertolino took an opportunity to lead Stockton University in New Jersey, an institution in his home state and the alma mater of his mother. Dr. Bertolino's leadership at Southern Connecticut State University for 6 years paved the way for our new interim president at Southern, Dr. Dwayne Smith. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Smith in this role as we go into the summer and prepare for a new academic year. I'm also thankful for the work of interim president Paul Barrett at Western Connecticut State University, who in just 1 year has reorganized the leadership team, engaged the faculty, built stronger relationships in the community, brought more support to key areas of health and safety that have been deprived of resources, and uncovered certain practices that will be improved to the betterment of the university. This year, we also heard from President Elsa Nunez of Eastern Connecticut State University that she will be retiring at the end of the 2023-2024 academic year. For 17 years, President Nunez has been a staunch advocate and fearless leader for Eastern, and it shows in their academic outcomes and national rankings, the growth and development of their physical campus, and in the institution's financial situation. I'm grateful that I will get to work with her 1 more year and have her there as we do a national search for the next president of Eastern Connecticut State University. We will have more news on institutional leadership this summer, but for now, let me thank all of our presidents, including President Zulmatoro at Central and President Klonowski at Charter Oak State College, for their leadership, vision, collegiality, and partnership in not only doing what is best and right for their institutions, but for the system. Across the system this year, there have been many accomplishments. At our last Board of Regents meeting, we celebrated the achievements and recognition of our faculty, without whom we could not do the work we do. They bring prestige and honor to our institutions with their scholarship, research, creative work, and service, even as they serve our students with rigor, compassion, and care, inside and outside the classroom. I want to thank our collective bargaining unit and faculty leaders, who I have come to know and appreciate more and more for their advocacy and diligence. Louise Williams, John O'Connor, and Cindy Stretch of AUP, Seth Freeman and Elle Vandermark of the Four Cs, Greg Carrar of SWOF, Larry Saleh, Dennis Boguski, and Kalina Sasanker and David Blitz representing the Faculty Advisory Committee, and all our campus-based leaders. I appreciate your honest engagement and willingness to continue working together to achieve shared goals and outcomes. Thank you to our DEI leaders across every campus who came together to create a remarkable day-long training that nearly 400 managers from across our system participated in during sessions held throughout the spring semester. It is the kind of work that is emblematic of the power of a majority-minority system like ours, when we collaborate and set our sights on a shared North Star that makes our work and our worlds more inclusive and more equitable for all. We made great strides in system-wide grants and extramural funding. We enhanced external partnerships to the benefit of statewide workforce development, our communities, and our students. And we continued to improve upon existing and create new programs that best serve our students in the 21st century. Lastly, much of this past year was committed to CSCU 2030, but we did not secure a major state investment in our system. The end of legislative session brought us a budget that yielded approximately $160 million more than the governor's originally proposed budget. This is no small thing, and it helps us to stabilize for fiscal year 24 and see fiscal year 25 and outgoing years soberly and honestly. This too would not have happened without the remarkable advocacy efforts of our collective bargaining units. The 2030 process and experience was also valuable in that it laid bare our strengths as well as areas we need to improve. We are up for that challenge. CSCU 2030 also recommitted us to the moral and operational pillars upon which our system stands. High quality, affordable, accessible education leading to life-sustaining wages and career growth, and socioeconomic impact across Connecticut. Later this meeting, our regents will vote on a spending plan resolution that, if approved, will allow us to do the work of our system while working to achieve savings targets at each institution and in the system office. After hearing from faculty and staff in person and via email and consulting with the board, there will be amendments to the resolution that will strike reference to consultants and also strike the request for $4 million from reserves. I appreciate the honest feedback we received on this matter, and we will continue to do our best to be open to dialogue and responsive in a way that helps move our institutions and our system forward in a positive and productive manner. I know people are nervous. I know the projected budget landscape is daunting. I am committed to working with each president and their institutional leadership teams to follow shared governance in our processes in a way that will allow for as much flexibility and latitude in local decision-making while remaining unified and accountable. But have to be clear-eyed and honest in terms of what we are facing. This is not a 2-year biennium budget problem. Demographics of our state and the entire New England Northeast region show only decline in traditional college-age students for the next 2 decades. This is our opportunity as institutions and as a system to change, to evolve, and to meet the challenges that lie ahead while continuing to serve our students and our communities at the highest level, new, innovative, and transformative ways. We have to understand that this is not a challenge for one group or just a few of us to face. This is a challenge for all of us, and we will not rise to the occasion if we do not unite. As I have said since I began my appointment as system president 2 years ago, I will always be at the table for those difficult conversations so we can find a way to move forward together. I will be ever present with our presidents of each institution, and I know they and I will work with all of you to co-author solutions for the future. It has been a long year, and it has been hard at various times. But ultimately, it has been a good year on many levels, thanks to your hard work on every campus and at every institution. From the folks who maintain our facilities, to our campus safety and police, our faculty and staff, our administrators, our external partners, and our board. We may not feel it every moment in every initiative or situation. It is always a team effort. It has to be a team effort, or we will fail. I know that none of us have such plans. I'm humbled and honored to be able to complete this year and begin working for next year and beyond. So I will conclude by saying thank you to Regent Holly Howery and Regent Felice Gray Kemp. I will miss your candor, your warmth, your pragmatic honesty, your sense of humor, and overall generosity, kindness, and goodwill. Thank you for helping CSCU and this board come to a better place. Thank you, Chair Ryan. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, President Chang. Oh, Alina?
I just want to, as the only member of faculty at the community colleges on this, it is on, is it? Yeah, okay. As the only member of faculty at the community colleges on the board, this is a moment, I just want to speak to just the opening of the new college, because this is quite a moment. I'm sitting here in my Gateway shirt. We got 2 days left, and we're ready for the next thing. But I do want to just make sure that we acknowledge certain things, because while a lot of work has been done, there is a lot of work ahead of us, and it will require that we all sort of acknowledge what that challenge is. The shared governance has gotten up and running, and I certainly credit Dr. Maduko with doing that within his first year of tenure with the system. Yet it was about 6 years in the making. We spent 6 years without governance for that college. And I think part of the consequence of that is that there may have been an underestimation of both the costs and the structural necessities of that college, right? There are, for example, a lot of elements of the running of that college that bypass institutional leadership, and it's a real question whether that sort of structure is adequate and whether we underestimated the workforce that was necessary for certain functions. So while we are at this moment that is certainly impressive, I wouldn't use the word proud. I would say I am in awe of what we have accomplished, building or putting together what I believe is the nation's 5th largest community college over the last few years, while a pandemic was raging, while running 12 other community colleges, while escalating inflation challenged our students more and more, has been overwhelming. It has been challenging, and many of us have learned new capacities and limitations in the process, certainly. And I think that awe should remain with us, because until we turn that structure into something that does not facilitate greater disinvestment in the students that have already been disinvested in by the state, we have yet to know whether we should be proud of what we have done. So again, when we're thinking about mitigation and we ask about whether or not this college's transition had costs, we're told that we have been suffering attrition for over 5 years. So the question is, how much more can we sustain? So let's please keep that in mind as we think about this. And Regents, I count on you. I'm glad to be able to work with you to make sure that this thing that we have built is a benefit and not a harm to our students. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Galina. I'll now ask Pam, Pauline, and Jessica, okay, to manage the public comment portion of our meeting. Thank you, Pam.
Good morning. Thank you. We were anticipating a student to join us, Hazel Hill from Tunxus. She has been unable to complete her link. However, she has sent a letter to be read into the record. And David Blitz has a copy, and he would like to read that as Hazel Hill from Tunxus. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Hazel Hill. Actually, it isn't, but this is a student who I met by chance at a coffee shop, which I happen to frequent on Route 44. And inadvertently, in a conversation, she mentioned she was a student at Tunxus. And I asked her, how is the consolidation going? And this is what she wrote to me. My name is Hazel Hill, and I've attended Tunxus Community College since the fall of 2021. I am currently enrolled in the Business Administration Associates Program. I've been planning to complete my associate degree this December of 2023 and move on to get my bachelor's. With the merger of community college, expectations and requirements for completing my degree have been in the air. This has been overwhelming and brought on a lot of uncertainty in various areas. My educational plan is to complete my associate degree this December at Tunxus. Then I intend to move on to UHART for spring 2024. UHART is one of the schools with a guaranteed acceptance program for community colleges. I got into Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society this past spring. This has opened the opportunity for me to afford the University of Hartford because of a potential scholarship. In order to do so, I need to have a completed associate degree from Tunxus. Throughout my educational career, I've always been one to go to my advisors and counselors for guidance. Last semester, I went to my guidance pathways advisor and other advisors to gain a better understanding of what the merger was going to be like and how it would impact me. I am a student that goes to my advisors immediately following the release of a schedule for the following semester, so I can start planning my classes ahead of time. I understood that was my degree. The final semester would be the best to have a business practicum. I wanted to connect with Tanya Machado to get an internship in line for the fall semester. I wanted to be prepared. In the past, my advisors have been incredibly helpful guiding me through the next steps to complete my degree with necessary courses. They've been helpful in creating a balanced course load while I balance work, school, and in the past, family responsibilities. However, I was disappointed that since the merger, I have left my advising sessions with more questions than when I came in. This is not at the fault of my advisors, though. They have been open with the fact that they have been unsure about what the merger means. Currently, I'm taking 2 summer courses. I am pretty sure that they will be added to my degree because principles of management and principles of marketing are in both degree programs, or the old and new versions. However, I'm still not confident about the final classes I need to take this fall to complete my degree. This has been stressful, not being confident in finishing my degree. The normal process of figuring out classes to complete a degree is already very stressful. Having a new degree program to compare all of the courses you have been taking up to date from a different program is incredibly inconvenient, as well as confusing as to what standards you are being held to. On top of this, navigating the credits that will transfer to a 4-year school is also stressful. I do not think that my peers and I who have been attending a community college should be worried about whether or not we can graduate on time and whether our credits will count to a new program that has been pushed on us. My concern as of now should be only finishing my classes and applying to a new school. My concern should not be whether or not I will graduate and having no answer about what classes I must take to do so. I think that proper assistance should be in place to help students that have been held to the previous standards to graduate. We should be grandfathered in. Another thing is now, if I'm grandfathered in, I have not been set up with an internship for this fall. I think that support is needed to those that already have been impacted by this and will be. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story and directing your attention to these issues. I am glad that my story will be able to shed light on how this merger has impacted me and others.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Lois Williams, president of CSU AAUP.
Hi, good morning. I'm Louise Williams. I'm a history professor at CCSU and also president of CSU AUP. I came here today to express my concern about hiring a consultant, and we have heard that you are striking that ask, but I still want to express to you why I'm concerned about hiring a consultant so that you don't make the mistakes consultants make without paying for one. I am not really opposed to spending money on consultants. What I think is really important is the choice of consultant to hire. I've been reading a lot of scholarly studies recently about them and found interesting conclusions. First, the top consulting firms give almost identical advice for all schools. In other words, they follow a playbook. They claim there's an impossible financial crisis that can only be solved by cutting personnel. They never recommend increasing revenue. And scholars also conclude that the savings they promise are rarely achieved and are modest or non-existent. And this is because they underestimate the complexities of higher education and the impact of faculty and staff resistance, which I could explain, but I don't have time right now. So their plans are usually abandoned or not implemented in full. We know this at the CSCU system. We've hired plenty of consultants since our 2012 merger, and we haven't seen enough success from these consultants to not be in the situation that we are in now. Even last year, when we hired NCHEMS to make recommendations about Western, they followed exactly the same playbook. Their plans were met with resistance, and they were put on hold. So hiring a consultant that does exactly the same thing, or us doing the same thing as consultants do, seems like a waste of time. There is another way, however. Instead of focusing on cutting personnel, which they all suggest, we should look for creative ways to increase our revenue. Most people claim this is impossible because of the supposed enrollment crisis of the future. Even Ben Barnes recently quoted figures from the book, The Agile College, to demonstrate this. But I think what's far more important about the book are suggestions for how universities should respond to these challenges. This is focusing on increasing persistence and completion of existing students. If we keep students in school and graduating, we can in fact increase revenue, even with a decline in enrollment. We could actually hire a consultant to help us with this. In a quick internet search, I found plenty of consultants that will help with retention. Based on the calculations of one of them, with just a 2 to 3% increase in retention, a system of our size could gain perhaps $200 million in 7 years. I don't know if this is true, but I would like to consider this option rather than the playbook of doing more with less. Ultimately, the decision about consultants or what we do even without them is based on our vision of where we want our system to go in the future. We have to decide whether we want a smaller system that only provides second-rate workforce training or something more expansive and positive. We could have a CCSU system that cares for students as individuals and gives them personal attention in order to help them succeed. We could celebrate our existing personnel and how well they're compensated. We could celebrate our numerous and varied programs, our small class sizes as assets that make us unique and better than other institutions, not as problems that we have to get rid of by cutting them. If we do this and increase our revenue at the same time, we will attract more students, engage and inspire faculty and staff, and maybe even convince legislators to give us extra funding to tide us over while we implement our plans.
Could you wrap up, please?
It's your choice. It's a very serious choice. I can guarantee that faculty will be watching you very carefully. We are more than happy to help you if you make the right choice, but we are more than prepared to oppose anything that hurts our students and schools. So please consider carefully before you decide how you're going to deal with this situation. And do make sure that everyone, faculty and staff, are included in any of your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is John O'Connor, also from CSU AAUP. You ready?
Let's go. Good morning, President Chang, Chair Ryan, and all members of the board. My name is John O'Connor. I teach in the sociology department at CCSU, and I'm an active member of CSU AAUP. I would like to thank you all for allowing me to address you this morning. I have appeared before this board numerous times over the years, both in person and remotely. And in all honesty, it's always been a dreadful experience. We get up here, kick dirt on all of you, and you all stare back at us and think we're all a bunch of lunatics. It's been nasty business, yet the song remains the same. Tuition hikes, consolidation, structural deficits, bad budgets, program cuts, call for legislative oversight, and threats of financial exigency. And that's just from 2017. But what does one expect when a governor's ex-chief of staff is made president of the education system he helped to create? It's all the stuff of a bad novel. In a recent meeting, it was either the FAC or finance, President Chang stated he cannot speak for earlier boards and earlier presidents. I think he's right about that. Of course, he does stand on the shoulders of those who came before him. He should and could acknowledge the fact that this board sits on a mountain of mismanagement. And that's where we are. And that's what we have to deal with. Today, I think we all need to keep in mind a few things as we go forward. These are scary and challenging times, no doubt. President Chang got up on April 24th at the LOB and said, without saying it, that Lamont and Beckham were wrong, that our system should not be right-sized. If it was true in April, it should be true today. That means there should be no talk of that we need to operate within the budget that we were given. There should be no moves toward the governor or his OPM cronies. We either believe in our students, faculty, and institutions, or we don't. What students and faculty members want to hear from this board is whether it's going to fight for our institutions. Is it going to fight for the transformative work that faculty do? We need bold thinking from this board. We need to hear less about mitigation plans and tuition hikes. The real question for all of you as members of this board is whether you're real leaders of public higher education in the state of Connecticut or just a collection of bureaucrats. Your actions are going to answer that question. We want to know from this board what it sees as the future for Connecticut's regional public universities. We're tired of being stuck between the community colleges and the flagship. I know what these institutions do from inside my classroom. I see it all the time. Western, Central, Southern, and Eastern are clear pathways to upward mobility. They make lives and they build careers. There are no other institutions in this state that anchor town and cities, that are responsive to employers, and that are true engines of equity. There is a clear regional university advantage that this board must protect and grow at all costs. It exists in Connecticut and it exists nationally. Everyone in this room knows it. For Black and Brown students, for our students, these institutions are a lifeline to greater opportunity. Maybe the power elite from Greenwich can't see that, but all of you can and should. So before we bring out the machetes and cut our programs and send our part-time faculty to the curb, we should be clear about our consequences here. University cuts will deepen the inequality that exists in our state. That increased inequality will be on all of you.
Could you wrap up, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
You should think long and hard about what you do going forward. Right? Our students deserve a great system. The people of Connecticut deserve a great system. And while we've heard a lot of talk from different people at different times about collaboration going forward, we should be clear, there can be no collaboration if there's going to be a capitulation to cuts and institutional devastation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Cynthia Stretch, our AAUP Vice President.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Stretch. I'm an English professor at Southern, and I'm the vice president of CSU AAUP. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. On January 24th of this year, Woodland Street launched CSU 2030, CSCU 2030, calling for a generational investment in the system. Faculty at the state universities were glad to see that the system leadership were finally showing up at the LOB with an ask commensurate with the educational value of the universities to the state and to the lives of our individual students. When we read the plan, however, we noticed quite a few things that seemed ill-conceived, or rather, ideas that seemed aimed at padding the portfolios of ambitious campus and system administrators, but poorly articulated with the mission of the state universities and out of sync with our students' needs. CSU AUP leadership had several frank conversations about our concerns with President Chang and Mr. Barnes. We told them that we would continue to be fierce advocates for the state universities during the appropriation cycle at the General Assembly, but that we would not walk arm in arm on the slick gimmicks in the plan. And then we continued the work of fighting for funding for the universities that open minds and open doors. 4 months later, by April, CSCU 2030 was sunk. President Chang was in the news warning of layoffs, campus closures, and tuition hikes. But how did we end up in this situation? I'm not interested in dissecting system office legislative strategies, and I'm encouraged by the fact that I think what I heard was that the board will strike the $4 million war chest to hire consultants and specialized counsel from the Finance Committee's resolution. However, it is imperative that the board consider one strategic error, an error repeated so often and with such consistency that it almost amounts to a compulsion. Not one faculty member was consulted in any systematic or meaningful sense in the development of CSCU 2030. To members of this board, shared governance might be a dirty word, an obstacle to efficiency or change management, but repeated failure to consult the people who not only deliver the education, but who continually invent and revise it, the people whose work is at the center of the entire enterprise, the people who interact with our students inside and outside of class 365 days a year. To refuse to consult those people sets us up for a focus on cuts at the expense of efforts to enhance the educational experience for the students we have, let alone to attract students like Hazel, who apparently is going from Tunxus to UHart. That's insane. She should be coming to us. CSU AUP is not averse to change or to innovation. Our members do it constantly and effectively and often brilliantly with our students' needs first and foremost. With that ethic in our corner, CSU AUP punched above our weight at the legislature, and we are proud to have increased system funding to the extent that we did. There is an opportunity now to do things differently, to prove to the governor and the legislature that the universities and community colleges are more than just diploma mills. They must be more than that. The choices to hire consultants to keep campus leadership muzzled, to raise tuition again, and to rush headlong into layoffs and staff reductions are yours to make. Those choices will eviscerate a system that meets a vital educational need for thousands of students. You can make different choices today, and I hope you do.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Brendan Cunningham. He's treasurer of AAUP. Brendan, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Are you ready?
Hi, I'm Brendan Cunningham. I'm a faculty member at Eastern Connecticut State in the Department of Economics and Finance, and I'd like to talk about how actions speak louder than words. In the 2 years since President Chang joined the CSCU system and new members have joined the BOR, the words in faculty management dialogue have changed. The rhetoric has cooled a bit. Our actions have changed also. We worked together on behalf of our students to fight for more resources. That effort was successful. The General Assembly came up by 24% compared to the governor's misguided austerity proposal, a rate of return that rivals anything we see out of hedge funds in Fairfield County. In the wake of the new biennial budget, the words from BOR and system management have remained cordial. The actions, though, seem to speak a different message. We have learned from another bargaining unit that campus management confidential employees have been forced to sign non-disclosure agreements about financial matters. This short circuits shared governance on campuses with no replacement in sight. This is not transparent and it is not collaborative. The pending action to bring in a management consultant, although it may not be endorsed today, and lawyers is also not transparent. It is not collaborative with faculty and staff. It diminishes the voice of those who know our students and campuses the best. This expensive plan for consultants and attorneys is similar to many of the actions we saw before May of 2021 when our leadership began to pivot. We can connect the dots between performance failures in our institutions and past reliance on uninformed third parties and uninformed and unexperienced managers. These recent actions indicate that top-level management and the Board of Regents are not speaking clearly and transparently about their choices, although this may change with later actions by the board today. Management actions we've uncovered represent a relapse to the approaches that brought us this crisis in the first place. We are ready to counter efforts that bring us down the path that has failed our communities and our students in the past. We know we owe our students nothing less. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Seth Freeman, president of 4Cs.
When they say cut back, we say fight back. When they say cut back, we say fight back. When Chang lies, unions tell the truth. When Chang lies, unions tell the truth. Board of Regents members, Connecticut State opens in 3 days. Connecticut State is in a complete crisis. Connecticut State is in a crisis because right now, managers are cutting part-time and full-time staff in departments all over the state. Tell them, Ben, right now, we're in a crisis because you plan to raise student tuition by 5%, more than the 3% for state universities and Charter Oak. We're in a crisis because you remain committed to perpetuating systemic racism against our students through your ongoing exploitation of adjunct faculty. Why are we in this crisis? Because since this board has been in operation, you've completely failed to provide any meaningful oversight over system office managers. You've been a rubber stamp to the system office managers. Some of the most incompetent and dishonest managers imaginable. So the truth, we're in a state of crisis, not the garbage President Chang and the incomprehensible nonsense President Maduka said in this article. We're in a crisis. So I'm here today to deliver a petition signed by 430 students, faculty, and staff. The board should have gotten 308 emails over the last 2 days. with our demands. Stop the 5% tuition increase on community college students. Stop cutting stop cutting our part-time and full-time staff across the state. Utilize the $99 million in reserves to renew the contract of every part-time and full-time staff. And you've already said you're going to stop your incalculably stupid idea of wasting money on lawyers and consultants. Do the right thing today and stop the tuition hikes that will hurt our students. Do the right thing today and approve the use of reserves to renew the contract of every part-time and full-time staff who you are threatening today and who's being cut. So if you do not meet our demands, this summer we will expose and we will publicize each and every part-time staff member who you're letting go. Let's tell the public what you're doing. Let's celebrate Connecticut State and all the staff we're laying off in the food pantries, in the libraries, in the tutoring centers, in workforce development. Let's tell the public the truth. How about that? So if you don't meet our demand, this board will know the name of each and every person that gets cut. You'll know their names. So that's the demand. We will tell Governor Lamont the same. We will no longer allow CSU managers to attack and mismanage the system. Incompetent managers in this room. No longer.
Thank you. Our final presenter is Christine Japley from the English department at Norwalk. Professor Japley, can you check your audio and your video, please? Professor Japley, are you with us? She's our last presenter. Madam Chair, would you like to move on and come back to Professor Japley?
We'll come back if she does get up.
I'll watch for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pam. Next, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from the May 18th board meeting.
Just joined us.
Okay. Go right ahead, please.
Good morning. I would like to congratulate all the previous speakers who have voiced so beautifully and powerfully some of the problems we're facing. I agree about not raising the tuition. Raising the tuition 5% takes food out of the mouths of our students, the poorest residents of Connecticut. Do not raise the tuition 5% unless the chancellor, the presidents, and the VPs of the system office all take a 5% pay cut in solidarity with the pain students will feel. One example of problematic performance on the campuses is that 50% of Norwalk Community College has had no coffee available for sale to students for at least a few years. We fought for it this past year, but think about it. On an entire half of the campus, there is no coffee for sale for students. This ties into the lack of communication between the system office and down. There's a huge communication failure because communication on our campuses now is only top down, and it's mostly PR happy talk. So I remember President Maduco mentioning earlier this year that he had heard no complaints from anyone. He had heard no complaints from students, but that was partly because he's brand new. Students didn't know who he was and wouldn't, if you ask most students now, who is John Maduco, they would say, I have no idea whatsoever. My second point also, repeating what others have said, do not waste $4 million on Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey. It's lazy of you to do so, and it's hints that you have not read the past history of this institution, where millions were spent. I think it was on Boston Consulting Group and also on McKinsey. And as a previous speaker have said, the results, what you paid for, was boilerplate that you could easily find by having your having librarians Google what consultants' advice was. The advice was, one, don't hire anyone new full-time, only hire part-time people with low benefits. Advice number two, make sure all classes are jammed full with as many students as you possibly can, even over faculty objections. And three, throw as many courses online as possible. This was before the pandemic. So as other speakers have said, you can get brilliant advice from academics in-house and break down some of the top-down happy talk communication by really engaging with faculty. Instead of spending millions where people in suits all talk in a room, and basically the consultants are pandering to you and you are being suckered by them. We're in Connecticut. Think of what Mark Twain would have said about that. Think of what P.T. Barnum would have said about that. I'll send you quotes later if you don't know off the top of your head. Within our system, I'm going to give you some names of some brilliant people to consult with. Some of them have spoken today. David Blitz, he has written a history of the sad past 11 years or so, started by a Democrat. Of course, I vote Democrat, but Daniel Malloy started this. Ojakian was basically his henchman. I'm sorry, I have to use that term. And you need to know the history of the long line of failed presidents and leaders. Please talk to David Blitz, Kalina, I'm finishing, Kalina Sisenker, Michael Shea, Patrick Sullivan, and many others, instead of wasting the money on consultants. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that does wrap up our public comment. President Chang?
If it's okay with the chair, I'd like to just respond to some of the comments that were made. So first and foremost, I want to, again, thank and appreciate the folks who came in person and who took time out of their schedules to address the board and to address the administration. You know, people don't do that unless they care. And I always try to, assume good intentions. And I believe that's the case here. People want good things for their students, their colleagues, their places of work, and that is immeasurably valuable. So thank you for taking the time to do that. So I'll just respond to a few items, not every item, but I took notes for just about everybody. First and foremost, the tuition increases that are going to be voted on today. We fully recognize the strain that this puts on our students. We fully recognize that every single dollar counts for our students, and we do not take these decisions lightly. You should please know that this is only one portion of an approach to try to work through the budgetary challenges that we are facing, but it is certainly something that we do with great consideration and deliberation and part of a broader calculation in terms of what we can do to try to be effective. In terms of some of the comments made about CSU 2030, it's been a remarkable learning process for me these past few months. And I completely agree with Dr. Stretch and others who have given me this feedback that, in hindsight, we certainly could have, should have included our faculty partners in the process. It is a point of reference that I will not soon forget. And as we continue to move forward, we will certainly work even more diligently to include our faculty partners and collective bargaining units in such processes. I will also say that it is a perfect alignment with what I firmly believe and have always believed in my career in higher education, Want to take care of the audio real quick? Okay. Um, I come from the faculty. I was an adjunct faculty member. You have heard me say this before. I've gone through the tenure track process, the tenure promotion process. I understand that journey. I still remember it very viscerally. And so I believe in shared governance and I believe in bargaining units, right? Bargaining units have protected me and helped me in my career at many, many points. So um, I believe in shared governance, but shared governance to me means shared leadership. Shared leadership is shared responsibility, and shared responsibility is shared accountability. So how do we continue to work towards that if we agree to that definition? And so I think that's part of the conversation that I would like to continue to drive forward. Um, I think some comments may make that goal challenging, right? When we hear from faculty and bargaining unit leaders, things like there will be no collaboration if there is capitulation, right? And that we shouldn't be talking about, certain measures and that we should continue to fight. We fought, folks. We fought hard. We did the best we could. If it wasn't good enough, it wasn't good enough. We'll learn from that. We'll keep pushing, right? Um, but one of the things that I think we have to understand is that if we continue to fight each other only and so tenaciously, I don't think that's going to help any of us move forward for the greater good. It doesn't mean that we're not going to disagree. It doesn't mean that we're going to constantly be in unison. It doesn't mean that that process of collaboration and partnership is not going to be very painful and difficult and at times somewhat sloppy, right? It will be. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with us kind of making that process up together because clearly there has been no history of that kind of work together. And so if we need to start from the absolute, ground level in terms of trying to build that up, then so be it. But I'm committed to that. I think in terms of the recommendations for bold thinking, you're 100% correct. If we are not bold and ambitious and audacious and ready to really shake and shatter the status quo, then we are going to fail. And that includes this kind of polarized, entrenched, confrontational sensibility that almost seems like muscle memory at a certain point, right? And that's not, I'm not pointing fingers at the faculty or the staff or the collective bargaining unit. It's all of us, because that's been our lived experience for a long time now. We all have to break that. We all have to shake that, because if we don't, we're not going to get it done. But I will say this, the bold thinking of a board or the bold thinking of a president or the bold thinking of an administration that is not coupled with the bold, ambitious, audacious, creative, innovative thinking of a faculty that owns curriculum and owns pedagogy and prides itself on research and data and ingenuity without the faculty and the staff being equal co-partners in that process, there to truly collaborate and not to be an obstacle to the administration and to the board because of historical patterns. If we don't get to that place, we're not going to get it done. And so as much as you all will ask me and my team and the board to do certain things, I will ask you to do the same. I will ask you to push yourselves as hard as you will push me. Because I'm here to be pushed. I'm happy to be pushed. I want you to apply the pressure. I want you to apply the heat. But if we have integrity in that conversation, then we will look inside ourselves as well. And we will look at our own constituent units and we will look at our colleagues and we will say, are you really pushing each other as hard as you should? Are we really pushing the envelope as hard as we all should? I will always ask that question of myself, ask my team and ask the board how hard I push myself and how hard I push the people that I am responsible for. Ask them on the record, ask them off the record. They will tell you the same story. And so I hope that we will all rise to that standard as we want to make things better. Um, I'll be honest, Dr. O'Connor, if there was a way for us to work outside the realm of reality and ignore the budgetary situation, I'd be happy to do it. I don't want to raise tuition. None of us want to raise tuition. We don't want to talk about layoffs. We don't want to talk about cuts. We don't want those things. We value our people. But this is reality, folks. And so if we don't start to firmly embrace reality and understand what the facts of the situation are together, we're just going to keep spinning our wheels and we're just going to continue to find ourselves in oppositional situations. The last thing I'm going to say goes to what Dr. Williams brought up in terms of findings of consultants. We would love to see those details. Please pass them on. Completely agree with you that the right consultant is everything. That we want folks who would come in if we were to work with external partners. We want folks who understand our world. We don't need somebody to come in and give us a cookie cutter. I actually spoke to somebody in the consulting world, not part of this, just as a professional conversation on different matters, who admitted that, consultants of a certain level or of a certain ilk are pretty happy to cut and paste findings from one report to another, right? And those billable hours somehow remain at the same level, right? We want to avoid that as much as possible. We want people who are going to understand our world and try to help us come to that better place. I love the idea of external partnership work or our own work that is focused also on generating more revenue. So again, I have an ask for our faculty and our staff. One of my primary goals going into next academic year is to increase transferability within our own system and to increase retention measurably. Because I haven't done the research that Dr. Williams has done, but I will tell you that in my past experience at other systems larger than this one, it was all about transfer and it was all about retention. Right? And if we can improve those measures, we are going to see marked increases in our revenue and in our enrollment and also in our performance metrics. But President, Chancellor, Chang, whatever my title is, I don't control the curriculum. The faculty does. So if we agree, and it sounds like we do, if we agree that transfer enrollment is important, that retention is important, retention comes down to advising. Terrence Chang and Ben Barnes and the rest of the team here and all the presidents, we don't advise students. Faculty and staff do. And so let's go back to innovation. Let's go back to shared responsibility. Let's go back to accountability. Let's go back to co-authoring solutions. I can come up with 100 different brilliant or ridiculous ideas. I cannot execute a single one personally. I need the faculty. We need the faculty. The students need the faculty and the staff to do that for them. And so your ask of me is also an ask of you and yours. So let's work on that together. Let's build that together. And let's try to get to that place together. Because as I said earlier, if we're going strain by strain, it's just not going to happen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe Regent Stewart has her hand raised.
Thank you so much. I believe when people come to talk at public participation, they want to talk to the board. So I genuinely just want to say thank you to those who participated today and gave us your feedback. And I just want those who participate to know that there are regents that hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Kalina has something to say.
Thank you. I agree fully. We can't afford to be fighting each other right now. We need to be focused on the source of our pain, right? And our limitations. And to the claim that we did fight. We had a little squabble over a few weeks in a decades-long war. that has been particularly focused on us for the past few years. Our strategy, the scope of what we were asking for needed to be significantly broader. And the number of people who were able to speak for that vision was the fact that it wasn't done in collaboration with faculty, with staff, with unions. Imagine if we were all able to sing the same song. Instead, we were kind of quiet all session long because we weren't sure how to justify it, right? So we have a lot more that we need to do, but I also want to direct our attention to, like I say, I'm the person on this board who represents faculty and staff at the community colleges. I speak calmly. It's a choice. But when you hear Seth Freeman speak, he represents the largest set of faculty and staff at the community colleges. And he does not speak calmly or quietly. And he speaks for the pain that we are feeling on behalf of our students, on behalf of the state, on behalf of the future, on behalf of our workers. I'm wearing my t-shirt. My college won't exist in 2 days. I don't know how many of my colleagues don't know if they have a job in 2 days. Some of them run the food pantry. So some of our students don't know where they're getting that in 2 days. Some of them support extended hours at the library. We support working students. So they need those extended hours if they're going to survive and move on to transfer. And we don't know what that will be in 2 days. So there is a lot going on here. There have been many years of dealing with this. It is particularly acute now. And the question is, have you laid the ground for collaboration, for true collaboration? Right? If people feel like they are under attack, if they feel like by its very design, we are not serving our students, and that comes down to leadership, it's very hard to collaborate on a plan that we don't see as serving our students, the state, or anyone, right? So again, to the tone of my president's voice, sometimes there is nothing more vicious than the politeness of a boardroom. If we understand structural injustice, we understand that it is in these exchanges that we sometimes do the greatest injustices and damage to many people. And I think what you are hearing is a caution from people who are, in 2 days, going to be working for a new institution where so much is on the line. So much is up in the air. So many of us have no idea. We went from I'm off contract. We're both off contract. We're here. We viewed ourselves, most of us, as giving our all to these institutions because it mattered. We wanted to retire from here. Now, half of us are trying to figure out, do I need to, right? We cannot face the challenges that we are facing if we are not all in, all with a single vision that we know is actually benefiting our students and state. And we are not in that position right now. So, a lot of these cautions about, even about accountability, you're absolutely right. You don't advise our students, we do. Do we have the tools to advise our students? The community college did not do a teach out. How do you advise students when you don't teach them out of the programs that they're in? That's what these challenges are. Do we have the tools to serve our students? And that we can work hard day, night. We have been. I guarantee you we have been. But if we don't have the tools to serve our students, we can't do it. So please hear that. I thank you, Regent Stewart, for noting, right, for that you're hearing the voice. Please hear that the tone carries a lot of importance. That is how urgently we feel it.
I just want to say quickly, thank you as always, Dr. Sasanker. Um, agree with you that our job is to find resources. We will continue to work to do that to the best of our abilities and provide what our faculty and staff need to do that work, right? And so completely with you on that. And, I think pain is an accurate word, right? And I do think it just needs to be recognized, and we need to kind of sit in some of that discomfort to give the pain and the wounds that have been created along the way through this very, um, you know, rigorous, difficult process these several years. It's legitimate, it's real. And if we don't recognize it, then it will continue to fester and manifest, and that's not going to help us, right? So, you know, we try to be as mindful as we can about that, and we can continue to do a better job of that. But I will say that, again, having been to all the campuses, getting to know people on all the campuses, I know that President Maduco has really committed to that as well. And, you know, I like Gateway a lot. Gateway's not going anywhere, right? That campus is not going anywhere. The people that you serve are not going anywhere. The ethos of each campus, the spirit, the character of those campuses, we will do whatever we can to defend them and protect them and try to continue to nurture them and grow them. The again, we're dealing with a history or a legacy, right? Our behaviors end up becoming innate. There is a muscle memory built in. There's reflexes in terms of how we interact with each other. It's hard to break that down. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a year or even 2 years, right? So I'll just say that um, as long as I'm in this seat, I hope to be here for a while. I'm going to always try to be respectful and professional and listen and learn and know when we can do better, and to hear people and to hold myself and our team accountable. I would just ask that we all do that, right? We all have to do that because ultimately, at some point, I think Dr. Cunningham brought this up. There's something about transparency and trust, which is absolutely critical and instrumental to whether or not we're going to have a high functioning, productive relationship to do what's right for our students, for our institutions, and so forth. And so, you have my commitment that, I will always do the best. Our team will always do the best that we can. When we don't do well, we will continue to do better and again, hold our own folks accountable. But we all have to do that. We all have to do that. If we are only stuck in the modality of pointing at one side or the other, then we're just not going to be able to achieve that. So thank you.
Mr. Blitz?
Yes, thank you. It's more in the nature of a statement. This is going into my fourth year as an ex officio non-voting, but often speaking member of this board, and going into my 35th year as a faculty member at Central Connecticut State University. After 12 years of the merged community college, state colleges, and state universities into one overall system, 6 years of the planned merger of the community colleges into one institution, and 2 years since the arrival of new leadership at the CSCU and the Board of Regents, I think the following three questions need examination. One, did the merger into one system, Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, achieve its objectives, cost savings, and better services? After a decade of operation, is a currently structured Board of Regents able to fulfill its mandate, as stated in Section 185 of state statutes, including respecting the distinct missions of the universities and colleges and supervising the constituent units? Two, will the consolidation of the community colleges into one Connecticut State Community College achieve its objectives of cost savings, greater equity, and better services? Has it achieved these objectives to date? Can the serious transition problems identified by the FAC, and may I add, by Hazel today, be corrected in time for the fall 2024 session? Three, can we resolve the budget shortfalls endemic to our system, and in particular for FY25? I see now FY26 is being added as well, with a new narrative and positive measures rather than the negative model of the OPM, Office of Policy and Management. This means what they have said is that the enrollment decline must result in budget cuts. It elicited the equally negative response we saw in the April 24th press release by CSCU. Budget cuts will result in forced layoffs of both full and part-time faculty and staff, increases in student tuition across the board, and elimination of programs, especially high overhead, employment-focused ones. I think that the April 24th press release should be rescinded, and this board, executive of the CSU, should make that clear so that the stress and the tensions imposed upon faculty, staff, and for that matter, students can be eliminated. But I also believe that if I make a critique, I should make some positive proposals. Here are 11. 1, use the system office, university, and community college reserves to offset part of the expected FY25 deficit, while respecting the reserves of those member institutions which have budgeted adequately in the past, remained in a positive financial situation. 2, retirements and resignations of senior faculty and staff are usually replaced at lower salary levels for new hires at junior levels, or can be deferred for a year. 3, adopt pension-based measures, additional years, aka golden handshake, to encourage voluntary retirements of faculty and staff. 4, limit to existing numbers system office personnel at all levels, since with the second system office in New Britain, the tendency may well be for each to expand into available space. 5, extend the 3+2 BA MA programs already at some universities and programs to all universities and programs eligible to attract additional students who might otherwise go out of state or into the private sector. 6, link employment-oriented certificates to completion of the associate's degree so as to retain students at the community college and better prepare them for possible career changes. 7, consider a 2+2 BA MA for community college graduates who transfer into the major for which they've been fully prepared at the 100-200 college level. 8, incorporate sustainability in all building and renovation plans for both environmental protection and green energy economies. 9, develop a shorter strategic plan, 2 to 4 years at most, with clearly defined priority objectives and specific metrics. Restore confidence with the executive branch and legislative leaders. 10, increase the honors programs that exist at the various universities to offer students top-tier liberal arts education at public higher education prices and attract students who would otherwise go into the private sector or out of state. And finally, 11, on the basis of the above sort of measures, and I proposed 10, but I'm sure that other people can think of many more. Request mid-biennium adjustments for FY25 as still needed. None of the above measures involve any forced layoffs, tuition hikes, or program elimination. There are a number of basic principles which should underlie the work of the board and its relation with its constituent units, community college, Charter Oak, the 4 CSUs. We've spoken about this on a number of occasions, but I want to repeat them now. 1, respect the distinct missions of the colleges and universities and respect the autonomy and integrity of the constituent units or institutions. The CSU system is a system of 3 component parts: the community college, has 12 constituent units, Charter Oak, and the 4 Connecticut State Universities. We should respect a system of systems approach or federated approach, which combines respect for the autonomy and integrity of the constituent units with cooperation and leadership from the central administration. Policy should be based on consultation and consent of the constituent units, faculty, and staff. As an added measure for the transition to one community college, continued college campuses and full services at all existing locations should be guaranteed. And I would go so far as to suggest their individual accreditations should be maintained, at least for a specific number of years, as a fallback measure, even as CSCC itself is accredited. We also have to meet what I call now the Hazel challenge of the transition from the various individual programs which had been developed by faculty to meet specific needs to the aligned programs which are now, in a certain sense, being imposed. 3, respect shared governance. This implies a willingness to fully take into account the expertise of faculty and staff and to focus on mutual agreement rather than impose resolutions to make needed changes in the system. And I think that's consistent with what President Cheng or Chancellor Cheng has just said and what Kalina Sasanker has also indicated. The history of Students First has been one of management asserting its authority rather than seeking cooperation, to the detriment of the educational experience of students and career satisfaction of faculty, staff, and, yes, I should admit, administrators as well. 4, respect faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy. I think that point has been well made by President Cheng as well. 5, practice better communication and consultation. And on that basis, we can envisage increased cooperation and, to the extent advisable, coordination. But the command and control practiced by the former administration, with perhaps an echo remaining at the system office today, has to go entirely. The changes in the last 2 years to BOR and CSU leadership are significant and should augur well for improved functioning of the system and relations with its constituent units, faculty, staff, and students. But old habits persist, and the lack of mutual trust needs to be further addressed. Given the very different narratives of the various constituencies, some new form of meeting to address the current crisis is needed, beyond regularly scheduled public meetings. And I hope that perhaps over the summer, we can investigate those possibilities. But in concluding, I'd like to state, 1, I would like to see the April 24th press release with its various negative measures officially rescinded. Number 2, that we take positive measures to begin to balance the budget. Number 3, that we guarantee the continued existence of campuses at the current community colleges. Number 4, that we do the extra work needed to accomplish the teach out which should have been done for the transition from students from old programs to new programs. And I think on that basis, we could have a much better system, rather system of systems, to the advantage of all. Thank you.
Thank you all. We do appreciate your obvious passion and your involvement. So thank you very much. We will move on now to the approval of previous meeting minutes. I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from the May.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Are there any other changes or corrections? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The May 18th minutes are approved. And for our June 6th special board meeting, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The June 6th meeting minutes are approved. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll call on the committee chairs for their report. First, we have the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Ira Bloom, Chair. Chair, Bloom, do you have comments?
Very brief, Madam Chair. The ASA committee met on May 5th and June 6th with the presence of its members and Professor Sasanker. The committee recommended the items that we just approved on the consent agenda, A through F above. I want to call attention to particularly the appointment of the CSU professor designation for Dr. David Pettigrew, professor of philosophy at Southern. This is a very distinguished, he has a very distinguished record of accomplishment. It's a really good example of what some of the more senior faculty have accomplished, and his record is in the materials for this meeting. So this is, I think, significant, and I just want to call the board's attention particularly to this item, and perhaps to say something about the importance of senior faculty to the enterprise. So, yeah, his work, particularly in research related to human rights in Bosnia and Herzegovina, has important ramifications for other areas as well. Madam Chair, thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Committee Chair Bloom. We appreciate your report. Next, we have the Audit Committee, chaired by Elise Wright, but I believe Audit Committee Chair Elise Wright has no report today.
That's correct.
Thank you. Next is the Finance and Infrastructure Committee. Richard Balducci is chair. And I believe, Chair Rich Balducci, you do have 2 items for board consideration from the Finance and Infrastructure Committee. First, we'll address the tuition and fee adjustments resolution. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? There will be discussion. Or first. Discussion. So we do need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to adopt the resolution on tuition.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
Now discussion. Now discussion. Go ahead. Discuss.
You know, before I begin, just a couple of quick comments. First of all, so you know, I was opposed also to the consolidation in 2011 of the community colleges and universities, and it took me a long time to get used to that. It's like anything else. Now we're consolidating with the community colleges into one. Change is often difficult, even when you volunteer or wish to make change. Buying a new house, that's a stress for many people, even though they plan on doing it and want to do it. But we're going to be moving into that, and hopefully that'll work out well for everyone as we move forward. And I just hope I never have a doctor's appointment after I listen to Mr. Freeman speak, because my blood pressure, he just has a magical way of getting it to rise. With all the other comments that go on, I appreciate all of them, by the way, but somehow he just has this magic touch for me. And I'm glad I don't have an appointment after this particular meeting. We do have, the Finance Committee met on Wednesday, the 21st. We had 5 items, action items. 3 of them were on consent, and 2 of them are here today. The first one, I just made a motion to, and it was second to, on tuition increases. And I just want to read over a couple of these things so we all understand, and it's a little clearer to us. Nobody has been mentioned by the Chancellor, by Ben, by me, by the chairman, wants to see increases, but sometimes you have to do things to pay the bill. Items will increase at the state tuition for $27 per credit, or $266 for a full year. All right, and that's basically 5%. Increase at Charter Oak is $16 or $20 for graduate students, or $252 for full-time student, undergraduate student. That's a 3% increase. And just a quick summary, so I want to make sure people understand exactly where it is. Connecticut State is a 5% increase, $266. Charter Oak's a 3%, $252. CSCU is a 3%, but that's $368, almost double, certainly, well, not double, but 1.5 times certainly Charter Oaks and the state, Connecticut State Community College increase. Also, there's a $10 increase, I think, for theater at Central, which is part of it. I've moved adoption. There's been a second. Open for discussion. Any comments by any members? We've certainly done this a dozen times, and we've had people comment pro, con, and sideways on it. Again, hopefully we can get this done, and working together, hopefully we can find a way to not have to continue to do this And I think, Colina, your comments, by the way, I take with a great deal of respect, and hopefully we can work this somehow together to make this happen and come together so we don't have to do that. Faculty and staff are happy, students most of all are content, and we can move on with the programs that we have before us. If there is no further
Rich?
comment, I can't see.
Oh, I
Rich?
have my hand up.
I,
Regent Stewart, thank you.
Quickly, I spoke in committee briefly about this. I asked a couple questions. I'm still not sure that I feel entirely comfortable supporting it before I see a plan for the future of the system in and of itself, which we'll talk about in the next item. I just want everybody to know that, full disclosure, I plan to vote against this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise has something to say too.
I just
Please,
want to be,
right.
Rich, if you could remind me, sort of over the past, when was the last time we had an increase in tuition?
I think it was 2020 or
20.
So
There
was
was an
it,
increase in tuition last year, but the prior year was a freeze.
Right.
2 out of the 3 years during that.
so there had been a 3-year freeze, we did an increase last year, and the question I have, and I don't know, if, was that Ben speaking?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Yes. When we do freezes like that, is the inevitable over time that you're going to have to do a catch-up? I understand at the time the rationale for us doing the freeze, but would you be, I guess the question is, would be better off doing smaller incremental freezes as opposed, incremental increases as opposed to the freeze over a 2-year span, an increase and then another increase? I'm just trying to understand, and maybe this is something I'm trying to determine from the student's perspective, from the faculty perspective. I mean, the reality is that we have to sort of, as Rich says, pay the bills. I'm just trying to understand, are there consequences for sort of doing the freeze over a 2-year period?
I think you're right in that. And doing the freezes incrementally, doing that. Hopefully, I think one of the thoughts back when we did the first one was that there would be a way out, somehow a way out of this over the next year or so, so that we could continue on with not having to increase tuition. Hopefully, thinking about the end of the pandemic, increasing student enrollment, et cetera, et cetera. However, that did not happen, Elise. And we end up in a position where we are now. Student enrollment's down, costs have gone up through salary increases and fringe benefits, et cetera, a host of things that have driven costs up and not done anything for us, I think, to help alleviate the problem of not having to raise tuition, even modestly. This is nowhere near where we should be if we had to try and break even, by the way.
Yes. Regent Bloom? Yes, thank you. Regent Bloom?
Thank you. As I understand it, for most of the lowest income students, the rise in tuition will be covered by Pell Grants and other financial aid sources. Am I correct?
Correct.
So, for the most part, I understand this is not for, because of various exclusions, it's not for everyone. But sometimes we look at college tuition, there's a retail charge and a real charge. A significant percentage of the students are not paying the full tuition or the posted tuition, correct?
Correct. As a matter of fact, about 60% of those students either are all or are either are totally covered or are partially covered by tuition fees through Pell Grants and other grants that we have around, the
State grants, I assume,
Yeah,
and other. I think it's important to make that point clear.
Okay,
Read
that's as
include
clear as.
the Pell Grant amount for fiscal '24 rose by $400, I believe, up to $7,395 for the coming year. That is well above the full-time tuition rate. Additionally looked to in establishing.
Thank you. Yes, any other further questions?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Well, first off, I want to remember in future meetings to bring my blood pressure pills along for Chair Balducci, who I appreciate as chair of the Finance Committee, and I do want to see him serve happily and healthily here. The question that was just raised is the relevant one, and I brought it up at the Finance Committee as well. If 60% of students are covered by Pell Grants and other finance, that leaves 40% who aren't. And we don't have an estimate at what will be the effect on their enrollment or continuation at the community colleges with the 5% increase. So I think that's a real difficulty in approving this particular resolution. That should have been here. In the whereases, the fifth one, there's a consideration of the maximum Pell Grant, and we've just discussed that. But it should have been clearly indicated that 40% of the students will not have a full Pell Grant, and consequently, they will be shouldering, to some extent and perhaps completely, this 5% increase. And in that case, we need to have an estimate of how that's going to affect enrollment and retention. Thank you.
Yes.
Were you responding or?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, I'm getting confused with the 40 and the 60. So I'm just gonna read from the finance agenda. Just right. So what we heard was, or on page 15, community college tuition and fees have been flat for the preceding years. So from 2020 to 2022. And then during the 2022 to 23 award year, 40% of enrolled financial aid applicants pay nothing for tuition and fees because of PAC, Pell, Roberta Willis, or some combination. And then an additional 59% have portions of the costs covered based on financial need from completing the FAFSA. So a couple of things. In terms of that, just to keep in mind, when we talk about the 40% of students who have their costs completely covered, those are people who qualify for Pell, and they are more likely to be inhibited from enrolling because of the cost of just living than they are the cost of tuition. And when we think about the fact that we need to keep students on board, these kinds of changes do make a difference. It also makes a difference as to how much of that money they will have available to them as they move on to higher levels of education. And then the other part, I agree with David. I know that we make these efforts. I think it's 15% set aside to help the other students who don't have costs fully covered. But I'm not like entirely clear on who that helps, who it doesn't help, to what extent it helps them. And that would be really helpful to know to what extent those students might be either taking on debt or, whatever it might be. So that kind of report would be really helpful in understanding how we're actually affecting those students. Is there any, is there anything that we could say at the moment as to like who gets that kind of assistance, what level of assistance they're likely to get, et cetera?
Based on by the FAFSA completion, to the best of my knowledge.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Ben.
Neither
I'm
can
sorry,
I.
give me, I'm a little, too many things in front of me here and blocking my microphone. The community colleges award institutional aid based at least in significant part on financial need as demonstrated through the FAFSA completion. disclosures that students make. There may be some additional factors that drive the use of institutional aid, but my understanding is that the majority of those funds are awarded based on financial need.
And by the way, the $7,400 Pell Grant plus the Roberta Willis and others, you're looking at it, the annual fee or our cost for a year is $4,900 now with the increase from up to 266, dollars. That extra money, many of them use for childcare, for books, for transportation, et cetera, for food and so on. I don't think there's a restriction on it, to my knowledge, as far as how they use it, as long as it's used in the educational process.
So if I may, thank you, Committee Chair Balducci. Another piece I'd like to kind of throw into this is super complicated, right? And so on the macro level, as we said before, raising tuition is something that we take incredibly seriously, and we want to understand the impacts as much as possible. And it is a very complicated kind of projection or calculation because of so many different factors, some of which we can ascertain data, and some of which is unfortunately subjective or anecdotal. Another piece of this, as I'm listening to the conversation, and I think all of your questions are spot on. I agree with you. We need deeper understanding of the impact, because then you throw in the fact that PACT has been funded again for the next 2 years. And so where's the crossover when related to our Pell students, to our non-Pell students, those who are PACT eligible, and so on and so forth. So this confluence of factors um, clearly makes it less than simple, less than elegant. Um, that being said, I think it's also clear from our, kind of work and understanding that um, this tuition increase, given the freezes that we had over the last few years and given kind of where we are right now, is an unfortunate element in our kind of short-term approach and solution.
Any other comments on this?
You can't see me in this corner. I just want to say that to acknowledge the challenge we're facing. It's a difficult, complicated issue, as Taryn said. And I'm also going to say that I'm ready to vote yes on it. But Regent Stewart, that doesn't mean that I disagree in the least with your concerns about the challenge of doing that without having the larger picture as clear as we would like to do it. I'm coming down on the yes side because we've got 2 days before the start of the new fiscal year comes, and there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of clear work and strong work has gone into this. And I think I'm ready to move ahead now because we really must. And it's a challenge, I'll agree, to move ahead when we don't have the full, clear, in-depth understanding of some of the complexities we just heard about. But I'm comfortable that more than comfortable that enough of that work has been done that we would be better served if we had with this resolution.
Thank you. Ari, Ari, do you have some comments? Your sound?
Ari, you're on mute.
Coming through now?
Oh, now you.
You're good, Regent Santiago. Or you were good, and now you're not good. You did something and we heard you, and now we can't.
How about now? Yeah, with this audio.
Do something. hear you now.
Regent Santiago, can you give us a sound check? Because we see your phone is connected, but your audio on your video is off, and that should work, but it's not coming through for some reason.
Is it working now by any chance?
Yes.
Oh, finally. I'm trying to understand, when are we going to have the larger plan? I mean, it seems clear to me that costs are rising, enrollment's decreasing. I mean, we have fixed costs that we have to deal with. Tuition increase seems like a logical step in the process, but there's lots of challenges. And I'm trying to understand from the bigger perspective, when are we going to have a larger plan of how we're going to solve the challenge that we find ourselves in?
Well, one of the things we're going to do, we have another piece to follow this, another voting part to this finance package today, which deals with deficit mitigation. And we have a deadline on there now for responses to give us thoughts and ideas as to the direction we would take. It's out there for faculty, staff. It's out there for the presidents and of the colleges and universities that we need a response. And that's in the new resolution, which hopefully will pass today, along with a couple of other changes, Ari. So you're right. We're trying to head in the right direction. We're talking about, and Colina had discussed before, as did David and members of the committee, what direction can we go to help resolve these problems with diminishing student attendance, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the kinds of things we're hoping to get some resolve to over the next several months from the college and the universities.
I just find that that's somewhat unsatisfactory in that it doesn't really give me a when. When are we gonna, what is a date we're gonna target to have this put together and a path, chart a path forward?
The resolution for consideration under the spending plan requires that the administration put in place a process that will lead to having institutional deficit mitigation plans before the board before November 1st. So I anticipate that in the October cycle, there will be, that's certainly we're working toward an October delivery of a comprehensive plan to address the budgetary challenges that we have. So we have, I don't know how many months that is, July, August, and September, and we anticipate presenting that to you in advance of the November 1st deadline in the resolution.
It just seems to me that we need to have an agreed, a more detailed plan, Ben, to get from here to there. Because essentially what I'm hearing is, hey, we'll get back to you sometime before November 1st. And, I don't want to be on October 30th looking at a detailed long-term plan. It strikes me we need a plan to get to this plan that involves engaging with the board, engaging with other stakeholders that we can sort of sink our teeth into and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get there. And we can sort of say as the board, hey, that makes sense. And we're supportive of that. And I'm not hearing that.
Yeah, so if I may, Regent Santiago, completely understand your concerns. And I agree with you. It's very nervous making. And I appreciate the perspective of a regent looking at this and saying, I'm not sure this is enough, right? So a little bit of just context. And as we all know, I think one of the things that I would say is we developed 2030 as much as it was clearly imperfect and ultimately did not yield the result that we wanted. That was a plan, right? That was something that we had hoped would gain traction and ultimately find a way to sustainability and long-term viability, as I've been saying. And clearly, with the result that has kind of come upon us, um, and with the current budget situation and further analysis of where we believe things are going to go, we need to redouble our efforts and dive in. And as our faculty partners have said, not just to look at mitigation, but also to look at enrollment, which I know you are a constant voice and champion for, looking for new ways, new ideas, evolution, growth, innovation. And so we certainly need to do that. I will tell you that we have begun a process with our institutional presidents and their leadership teams to meet regularly, to really kind of carve through every aspect, every detail, every nuance, and frankly, every opportunity. Again, not just to find efficiencies or savings, but also to come up with new, innovative, creative ways to generate new revenue through enrollment, different markets, different opportunities. And so hopefully with the support of the board, we will enact a multitude of measures and be very aggressive in the coming months. First and foremost, at an institutional level and as a system, to find balance and to begin to establish stability. And then with the encouragement of both the governor's office and OPM, as well as a rebirth of the legislature's Higher Education Commission, who will be deeply engaged in our work and who will be, very, very interested in how we proceed, as interested as the regents will be, of course. We will look to utilize all of those partnerships and efforts to continue to chart that path, because it's not just the regents and it's not just our faculty and our team that want that pathway and that plan. It is also the governor's office. It is also the legislature. And so it's incumbent upon us to produce. We find ourselves in a position now that, frankly, we didn't think we would be in 6 months ago, but here we are. And so we hear you loud and clear, and your comments, your concerns are shared by us, and we'll just continue to ask for your support and at times your patience.
So if I could just say, I appreciate what you're saying. What I'm still not hearing is the path to get to this new plan. 2030, I understand the work went into it. It didn't happen. We are where we are. We cannot keep doing what we've been doing. I don't think dipping into reserves to pretend that it's going to change the trajectory is going to work, and incremental tuition increases aren't going to solve our problem either. We need to chart that new path forward. And I think you've laid it out, that what the challenges are, but I'm still not hearing, and I don't know that we're going to hear it today, but I think we need to hear a plan that says, okay, over the next 3 months, what are we going to do to engage? The board should be involved, other constituencies, to understand what this new path forward is. And we're not going to get it today. I know we only have 35 minutes left, but that's what I really want to hear and understand. What's our vision forward? How are we going to get there? What are the metrics we're going to have to measure it? We have to recognize the situation that we're in. We don't serve the same number of students we have served in the past. Everybody's got to take accountability to that. And what are we going to do forward to change that course in the future?
Yeah, completely agree with you, Regent Santiago. And so I know that to be continueds are not the greatest answer, but I will tell you that frameworks, metrics are being established and have been established for both, the academic side of the house, as well as enrollment, and as well as in terms of other mitigation measures, right? And where it is complicated, and I don't mean this to sound like an excuse, but it's complicated because, let's be very honest, all of our institutions are not in the same boat, right? And so we cannot enact a sweeping set of measures that would affect all of our campuses equally. And to be very blunt, we have great, strong presidents and leaders at all of our institutions who have faculty senates and other governance structures and mechanisms through which they need to work. And so I want to be fair to our presidents and to their leaderships and to their campus constituents to go through that process legitimately. It will take a little bit of time, of course, and so we will certainly be presenting in much more detail the path forward. But let's just call it what it is. The path forward for Central is going to be different than the path forward for Western, which is different than, what it might be for CT State and so forth. And so that level of nuance, that level of kind of regionality and differentiation makes it a little harder to kind of create a solution, ubiquitously right now. But it is a process that we have begun. And I feel very confident in all of our presidents and their teams and our faculty and our senates and the structures that are in place for the governance process. And I feel confident in our system office team that we're going to be good partners to everybody, but we're also going to be holding people accountable. And everyone has heard me say it publicly and privately. We're going to ask each other the really hard questions, the uncomfortable questions, the painful questions. And to close on this aspect, that is not business as usual. Business as usual in the past was not having these conversations, was not being heavily scrutinizing to a truly pedantic and annoying point. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We have to make sure that we are wrestling through this regularly, every single institution. Those calendars are being set right now. And so we take that responsibility very seriously because we do want to get to that place that you're talking about, which is a clearer pathway and vision. But thank you for the input.
Thank you.
I think.
Region. Yes.
Just want to add two more quick points to the consideration. One is simply that in terms of how far should we move in the face of uncertainty, this consolidated college that we're raising tuition for doesn't yet have an OPEID. Am I correct? I mean, we have a plan forward. There's no future where we don't get one, but we don't currently have one or a date for one. Is that correct? That is the capacity to receive federal financial aid. Right. It doesn't. I'm pretty sure it doesn't now. I know that the target date had been July 1st, but I'm not sure that we have a hard date at the moment. It was among some questions that FAC sent to the CT State leadership, but we haven't received any answers. And I understand, I'm not suggesting that we're not going to get it. I don't think that's within the realm of possibility. And yet at the same time, to speak to Regent Santiago's caution of sort of what's the plan, right? Perhaps we can take a minute while we sort out some really basic things like that. Yeah. Okay, and let me just add my other consideration because he might want to speak to both. The other is just that we are at a moment that is particularly frustrating for our community college students, as was evidenced by that email, and she is not alone. So again, when we think about, very often we talk about our colleges like they are a business, and that's pretty inappropriate. But to think about that for a moment, to be raising costs at a time where we're also instituting new policies that put students on the hook for courses that are outside of their program. We don't understand what the consequences of that will be yet. We don't yet have our financial aid set up. We don't know what's going on. There is a lot of uncertainty at this particular moment.
Dr. Maduko, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Just to answer Dr. Sasenker's questions, which I think are valid and on point. Currently, we are utilizing Capital Community College's financial aid ID to allow both continuing and new students to apply for financial aid in preparation for the fall semester. In regards to our permanent ID, we're actively working with the Department of Education. Their guidance has been, let's close out this year in terms of reconciliation for the 22-23 academic year in preparations for them to give us the approval, which will trigger the Department of Defense and other regulatory agencies. And we are confident per their guidance, per their feedback to us, that we will receive that official approval. But in terms of the process of current and new students being able to, assess and learn about their financial aid status and preparations for their studies, that's actively going right now because we're utilizing the federal ID for Capital Community College.
So are you saying that we're currently in a position to both receive and disperse money to students enrolled in CT State?
Yes, so typically in October is typically when disbursement takes place, and based on the feedback we're getting from the feds, as long as we close out our year, submit our records, do the reconciliation, there will be little to no, and we're confident there will be no disruption or delay in the disbursement of financial aid for the fall semester.
And students can know what their financial aid packages are as of even right now? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Very, very quick comment. You may recall I voted no the last time we considered a tuition increase proposal. But we are, all of us, in a really challenging time, which many speakers have already talked about today. And that is based in large part, there's a lot of contributing factors to the complications that we're trying to address. But at the moment, especially the last part of this discussion, it has to do with the state budget for FY25 for the CSU. So I appreciate the work that the Finance Committee and leadership in CSU has put into this proposal today, both regard with to the tuition increase, but also the spending plan for FY25. And under the circumstances and the really short time frame we find ourselves in, I believe this is the best way to try to move forward. And so I plan to vote yes on both.
Is there any other discussion on that?
Any other comments? Vote. Not all those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No, for the record, Regent Stewart.
Abstain.
Abstains. Ayes have it. Resolution's adopted. We have one more item for us. And that deals with the spending plan and the deficit mitigation plan. You know, everybody's had an opportunity to look this over. I've been through this thing like it's by the way. But the spending plan today presents about a $13.7 million deficit for 24. The problem, of course, is, as I think you alluded to, Richard, is the 25-26 spending plan where we're $147 million short in 25 and $210 million short in 26. And you have numbers down there. I have them. The only two places that have any plus sign are Central, which is $13.5 million plus, and about $5.5 million plus situation for Southern. Everybody else is everybody else is in the negative. But as you progress through 25 and 26, the 13.7 million escalates to $147 million and well over $200 million for 26. That being said, we come up with a resolution to include steps to make this better. We'd gone through this, the mitigation plan. We had discussions in the Finance Committee last week, a long discussion. Changes were suggested, et cetera, et cetera. And as you look down at the new resolution, which you should have received, hopefully you will see that there are changes being made, that the system office will establish and require each institution to develop a mitigation plan by November 1. That was not in the original resolution. It's in there now. That goes back to your comments, Ari, and others about when are we going to get something done. We're going to have to move forward between now and then to come up with that type of situation, with that type of response. The system will lead a comprehensive program review of academic and student support programs by all 6 institutions and will conduct an analysis of the system organizations. We're going to try and get those things done. And I have an amendment, which hopefully you've seen before you, which you have now before you, which makes a couple of significant changes. One of them that we had put in already was the November 1 date, which is already in there and a response to concerns by members of the committee last week. And if I can find my notes here, I'll be able to tell you what the other two are easily and clearly. First, it removes entirely the allocation of the system reserves for costs. The $4 million piece is out. If you look at the new resolution, it is not in there at all in any way, shape, or form. And it removes the second major change is something that's been commented on. It eliminates the requirement that the system engage with a consultant to perform the system analysis. That is also out of the resolution. And I already mentioned that the November 1 date is in there. So with that, I would move adoption of the amendment to the resolution.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion on the, yes.
Thank you, and thank you especially for the amendments and the changes. I want to say that I listened in on the Finance Committee meeting last week and heard all that people there had to say. And Regent Stewart, I was particularly pleased to hear you ask that the consulting line be removed, because that was a question I was developing as well. So I'm happy to support these amendments. I think they reflect the collective feeling. I'm happy to see that we've, I think, more clearly separated FY24 from the years that follow. I think that's an excellent idea, and I like that, because not only because FY24 is relatively manageable in the scheme of things, but also because it allows us to get going and allows us not months and months of time, but some time to contemplate not only 25, but 25 in the future. So I'm supportive of this resolution as a way to move forward immediately, which is important. But the other thing I want to point out is that both for 24 and the years that follow, the resolutions that we're approving now are, I'm not sure what words to use. Yes, it is a mitigation plan. Yes, it is a financial plan for FY24, and it's detailed. That doesn't mean that it's set in stone. I certainly expect that we'll all be working as hard, if not harder, to make 24 even more positive than it is now, and to make the prospects for 25 and beyond more positive. So in the spirit of this being the approval that we need to get going and to start moving in a certain direction, and that it's reflective of the various comments that I've heard in committee meetings and elsewhere, I'm ready to support this.
Thank you. Regent Stewart, you had your hand up.
Thank you so much.
Karen,
Thanks. Here I am. Thank you very much. I appreciate seeing the alterations, the amendments that are made to the resolution that's in front of us today, based off of the discussion and some concerns that I and others had expressed during the subcommittee meeting last week. I do still feel very strongly about not having firm timeframes. I feel very strongly about not having, looking at this language saying that we'll have it submitted to us by November 1st. I'm not quite convinced that the board is going to be an active participant in all of this. And that makes me uncomfortable with supporting it the way that it is today. In addition to a multitude of other concerns that I have that I've expressed privately and in the subcommittee meeting, I take my responsibility as a regent and as a part of this oversight board, and I take the fiduciary responsibility as a role in a regent very seriously. It's not to discredit the amount of work or effort that anybody's putting in here. I'm just not quite convinced that this is the right way to go about it. I told Mr. Barnes that I would have preferred to see possibly a 3 to 4 month spending plan before approving something for a whole year. We talked about that, and I appreciate him having that conversation with me. But I don't need to belabor the point. We've been here long enough already. I still plan to vote no on this today. Thank you.
Regent Santiago?
Yeah, I just was going to say that I appreciate the changes that were made, and apropos of my earlier comments, I'm just not comfortable with a will be submitted by November 1st without a more detailed plan, and I'll be unable to support the resolution as it currently stands, but look forward to working with management and the rest of the board to get us to a better place.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
In order to reduce Rich Balducci's blood pressure, I now have my own mic. So that's one positive of it. I had a question which was with respect to the November 1st deadline, which is for the submission. But then the question is, when will the final plan be made available and for implementation? Because that still leaves a certain period of stress and anxiety as people await. Is it going to happen in December? Is it going to happen in January? It seems to me there should be two dates here. One is the date of submission, and one is the date of presentation to the board. By the way, I welcome the reduction, the elimination of the $4 million and the consultant issue.
And I appreciate your comment. However, come November 1, there may be pieces that we need to put together that aren't totally there. Not that it shouldn't be, but we may end up that. So to say that we need a second date, that it's a December 1 or January 1, whatever, I think is a difficult thing to do at this time, David. I understand your angst. I understand the issue that it could cause. But I think as we look at this now, talking to faculty and staff, talking to the board, we know this isn't a ho-hum deal. This has got to be done. It's got to be done on time. And then I think then we should be able to make a presentation pretty much after that as to when we should have an implementation program ready. Melina, you were going to make a comment also.
So, I mean, so is it established then that that November 1st date is the presentation date? Because you said presentation and then, right? And then submission. So, or submission date, sorry, yes. Because I'm still looking at Board of Regents meeting dates at this point, right? And what would be really nice is not only because if regents want to actively sort of participate in the costs and benefits and discuss this at length to make sure that we're not under the gun to pass it because we don't have any time. You know, the next meeting after November 1st is December 14th. That seems pretty risky. The meeting before that is October 19th. I think in the service of the sort of oversight function that Mayor Stewart mentioned, that kind of discussion should be done in a public forum also. I think we'd all appreciate hearing the back and forth, the in-depth discussion, the requests for evidence and justification that regents might request. Very often we don't know, you know, to what extent regents are really able to participate in this. So if we can keep some dates in mind or propose another date so that not only is this both submitted and discussed, but it's discussed perhaps in a public format to the extent that that is appropriate.
I'll just say a few things quickly. I don't see any reason why we couldn't call special meetings of the board if as needed to discuss particular matters. These are clearly important. I understand the desire to have more concrete deadlines, and I think this is where we need to not only take into consideration what each institution may wish to pursue, whether it is a mitigation effort or it is through a kind of building enrollment or revenue effort or what have you. We also have, so depending on what each institution may or may not want to do, we have to look at the contract per bargaining unit and understand if there are stipulations and timelines as part of the contract that might be required for consideration. Right. And so at this time, again, as I've said already, my team, the presidents, their teams, we've just begun those conversations. The budget was signed approximately 3 weeks ago. And all from that point forward, we have been doing nothing but planning and trying to scaffold these processes. And we will continue to do so. And so I'm not saying the want or desire for a concrete timeline is erroneous. I think we can and should provide as much clarity as possible and do so in public when the time is right. We don't want to present things that are not stable for discussion, right? Ideation sessions presented in public will lead to massive rafts of misinformation and manipulation of snippets of conversations that would simply disembowel any good work that we're trying to do. So we have to be very professional and very mindful about, what we responsibly should talk about with the board, and we're at the beginning of the beginning. And so, however we need to work on that timeline, I and my team are clearly committed to doing that. The presidents are committed to doing that. But I just to be fair, and I think, our collective bargaining unit leaders were here, I think that they would stand by that assertion as well, that the contract says certain things about certain actions with timelines that are stipulated. And so we plan to adhere to those timelines, and we don't want to be rushed or unfair to the process as much as we see great urgency to come to a place of deeper clarity.
Hi, thank you.
Go ahead, Holly.
Thank you. This is hard, right? The budget situation we're in is hard. And the resolution isn't perfect. Nothing is. We should go slower. We should go faster. We should be more detailed. To me, the resolution says the board is setting out an expectation that this time we don't want to just let it roll and hope the funding comes through. And to me, that is very important because I haven't been here a little while. That is what has happened in the past. And by the skin of our teeth, we have gotten money or we found money or whatever. And the reality is that short-term funding has gotten us to where we are today. And so to me, this resolution says the board needs to put out some clear expectations this time, that business as usual is not going to solve this problem. And our expectation is we're going to have legitimate solutions to this problem as a result of this resolution no later than November 1st. And that's a huge ask, right? There's a lot of people involved. It's going to take a lot of innovative thinking. It's going to take a lot of teamwork. That's a really fast deadline. I get it. And we also don't have any time to waste, right? So to me, this kind of balances the line between how fast we want to see this solved and the time we need to take to get it solved. But I think if nothing else, it is very important for this board to very clearly state that it is our expectation that we are going to work on solving the problem and not just kicking the can down the road one more time. So, and for that reason, I'll vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Wright?
Yes, I think Holly and I have been working together too long. So she said pretty much what I wanted to say, but I wanted to add one thing, and this is more mundane, but in all likelihood, there are going to be specially scheduled meetings. I would ask that we put some holds on the calendar, because to try to, at least for me, I think I speak for others, to try to schedule a meeting with just a week notice becomes pretty difficult. But if we kind of get a sense what the cadence is going to be for the meetings, even if we put it on hold, very easy to do hold and then take it away if we don't need that date. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there? No, and is there any further discussion?
No further discussion. I would ask for a vote in favor of the amendment to the resolution. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed, Regent Stewart for the record.
The ayes have it.
Sorry,
Now,
I just voted opposed.
for amendment. Now we have to vote on the amendment, on the resolution as amended. So that's where I was headed. Now, the amendment now becomes the resolution, and I would ask for a motion to adopt the resolution as amended.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I have a,
Oh,
there should be some discussion on the motion as amended.
you know what, David?
That is true.
I'd like to say you're wrong, but you're right. I'm sorry. We have a motion and a second on the amended resolution. David, please.
There were a number of items that I brought up at the Finance Committee, and I just want to mention them again because it seems to me that this is an important resolution and which should be very clear in its formulation. Firstly, in the whereas, the fourth one, which gives the reasons for the financial circumstances in which we find ourselves. It's mentioned a combination of low enrollment from the pandemic, rising faculty and staff costs, declining state aid, and so forth. But I think it's also important to indicate overestimation of expected savings and underestimation of transition costs for the community college consolidation, and past lack of intervention with institutional presidents concerning their budget deficits. Because as it stands, the whereas clause simply says it's all the fault of other people. But I think we recognize here that there is also some responsibility on the system office and on the board, in particular for those two aspects. The second point that I wanted to make, and I would have moved these as amendments, but as you know, even though I now have my own mic, I cannot do so. But I do want to state this for the record. Beside in the resolves, in the second resolve, obviously adding a CSU president / chancellor, although I suppose that with the next resolution, this would be retroactive. But I've also asked that we include as well the CSU provost and BOR chair and vice chair as co-workers with the CSU president in establishing the procedures. It seems to me that that would increase the available resources for doing that. The third point, which I want to make, is in the third resolved, where it is stated that the comprehensive review, and I think this is still the same in the amended resolution, to ensure that they meet the mission of CSCU and in a cost-effective manner. I would insert at that point the following four statements. Based on academic standards at both the college and university levels, one, respect for the distinct missions of the colleges and universities, two, three, respect for the autonomy and integrity of the constituent institutions, four, and, three, and four, shared governance with faculty and staff. I'll make those 4 points available to the secretary, but it seems to me that those are important because they provide not just principles, but also parameters and in a certain sense guidelines. It's not just cost effectiveness, but it is also those 4 antecedent principles. That concludes. I'm not sure, that's a question for the chair of the Finance Committee. Did the last paragraph resolve that the CSU president shall develop and carry out communications plans? Is that still in?
Yes.
Okay. So I would just add at that point also not just develop a communication plan, but through consultation with students, faculty, staff, administrators, and on that basis, develop communication plans so that it's explicit as to the consultation that will be involved, antecedent to the communication plan. Those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And we did, and I looked at that, and we went over these, and some of them I think are somewhat, I think that many of them make sense. However, I think they're incorporated already in this resolution, one way or the other. We can also look at this as we move forward into the future if we find there is some of those any possibility of conflict. But I would like to move now, and with some of the changes that you suggested and other members, move this resolution as amended forward as is.
Chair Balducci, if I may, just quickly, I know we're trying to actually end this meeting at some point today, but I do think it's important to address some of the amendments that Dr. Blitz has recommended on multiple occasions now. And so I want to make it clear, we have read them, we have analyzed them, we have borderline perseverated over them. And so I'll give you my personal opinion on that. Your recommendation includes language that says overestimation of expected savings and underestimation of transition costs, past lack of intervention with institutional presidents, et cetera, et cetera. I would argue that those are subjective opinions, and just because they are put in writing and printed into a PDF or spoken multiple occasions does not make them true. It would be inappropriate for us to make official an opinion unless you have detailed analysis that is corroborated by substantial evidence that you could present to us. That's number one. Number two, you add language that would ask the provost, the BOR chair, and vice chair to engage in the processes that we are putting forward. I will note for the record, and I think everyone knows this, the provost reports to me. I work for the board, and the board is a volunteer board. They do not receive any type of compensation, and if anything, this probably takes years off their lives, and thus I think it's inappropriate to ask volunteer board members to perform administrative duties in a resolution. And it is also implicit that the responsibility of activity across this entire system falls on the president/chancellor of the system. And so the work that ultimately is performed by all of these administrators and at any constituency across the system does fall under my aegis. And so I would argue that noting my particular title and rank, it is implicit that there will be others that will be participating in that work and who will also be held responsible. And your final edit that I'll address is based on academic standards at college and university levels and shared governance. Again, I will just simply reiterate what I've actually said multiple times this meeting and will have said in the past, we'll continue to say, we respect shared governance, we respect the authority of our presidents, and we will work with them to exercise shared governance according to our contracts diligently and fastidiously. And so that will be the conclusion of my comment for now.
Yes.
As to the subjectivity of the failure of the achieved savings for the consolidated college, sure. But what would be very appropriate is an objective, concrete analysis of that savings. I did receive a response from Carrie Kelly, CFO Carrie Kelly, of her analysis, which I think echoes what I've gotten from you also, of those savings. They attribute the savings to what is called strategic attrition. That's not innovation, and it doesn't require restructure. In fact, we are contemplating doing precisely the same thing to all of our institutions right now, leaving offices unstaffed, leaving our workforce depleted, having people work 2 and 3 different people's job descriptions is not savings unless it is theft, right? And again, cannot be attributed to a consolidation. The increased workload required of assembling the entire course catalog of this college while running 12 colleges, which at this point is estimated a cost of what? Is not savings. So when we take into consideration reality, we take into consideration the enormous workload of having done this thing, which you expressed appreciation for, understand that that is work that people receive wages for. And they also were supposedly taking care of our current students at the same time. So while I understand that there are all sorts of official documents we push across the table to justify our actions, I think, and this speaks to the nature of the volunteer sort of status of the board, absolutely it's volunteer, but at the same time, there is a level of accountability and oversight that is owed to the state for what we're actually providing our students, how we are using their investment, and what we actually did for the past 5 years. What did we put that amount of labor and effort into? And is it harming or not? So I think it's absolutely necessary, right? That we're all, again, most of us, right, are here. We're not paid to be here, but this is important. So I couldn't let that go by without answering it. To the extent that there has been any objective analysis of this so far, it is beyond unconvincing. And we need a good one.
So I have a question then. Who conducts this objective analysis? Because
I think it's possible for us to be honest.
we are being honest. So if you don't believe what information you've been presented, I ask the question, who would you recommend or what entity would you recommend to conduct this quote unquote objective analysis? So, because laden in your comment is an accusation and an assertion that our folks are being dishonest.
No,
That is the
Sorry.
impact of your words on my assessment of the work that our folks have done. So I ask you a question. If you think there is a problem, which is that our numbers or our positions are illegitimate, then I would say to you, again, as a co-author of a solution, what do you recommend? Because as you've heard me say in the past, it is easy to say, this is wrong, or you're not right, or you're not good at this, or I don't trust you, right? And that's fine. Anyone can feel that way. And it's easy to say, but are we going to find a way to get to a solution? I'm not saying that what we have analyzed is perfect. If there are issues or errors in the work, we want to determine what those are and fix them. But I cannot I cannot stand by and let that type of assertion laden into your words be unaddressed, because a lot of people have worked for a long time, and as you all take a great deal of pride in your campuses and your students and your colleagues, we do as well. We do a lot of work to try to get this right. We're not perfect. We get it wrong sometimes. We make mistakes. We all do, right? And when we look at the student outcomes at the community colleges, that frankly led to the very intense conversation that created the genesis of this consolidation. Those student outcomes came from campuses. They came from outcomes of teaching and learning conducted by faculty and by staff. And so again, if we want to talk about shared governance and accountability and responsibility, let's open the aperture widely and make sure all of that is absorbed. So the other thing that is latent in your comments are that the board is not accountable. And again, I don't agree with that. Because if you listen to the comments just in this meeting, you can hear from almost every single board member that is exactly what they want. They want accountability. They want to see results. They want deadlines. They want more detail. Whether or not that happened in previous boards or with previous administrations, again, I wasn't here, so I can't speak to it. But what I would say is, let's recognize what's happening right here, right now, with the people who are engaged in this work, and let's focus on the things that we can work on to try to make things better. And let us also be very mindful of the insinuations within our assertions and whether or not those are actually appropriate or productive.
Well, let me be explicit rather than insinuate. To the second point, I hope that that what I was saying did not come off as the board doesn't want to provide oversight. I was saying the board needs to be given capacity, and that means they can't get a report the day before that is 200 pages long and somehow read it, analyze it, get some sort of independent analysis of it, and then respond. So I really hope that that wasn't what I communicated to you all. It certainly is not what I meant. I just also received 200-page agendas and realized what a lift it is to read them, understand them. We are not immersed in this all day as you are. There's a lot that has to go on, right? But to the first point, I can direct us all to Appendix LL of the March 2018 substantive change for the Students First Plan, which estimated the labor costs of establishing the 5th largest community college in the country at 0, and the transition costs at 1.2 million. What that means is, we have maintained that we have saved all along. What that means is that we embarked on an extremely ambitious plan to do a really big thing, and we asked for a state allocation of 0. Now, I want to say that when I get a report that tells me that we achieve savings through strategic attrition, what's not calculated in that is the cost of the labor, the redirected resources, the new central office in New Britain, a whole new layer of management, another layer that was established and then reversed, right? The opportunity costs that come with changing a curriculum where students are not clear on what program they're in, and the advisors that used to advise their students for half an hour and now meet with them 4 times for an hour each and still have questions. So this is an analysis that we can do if we are clear and honest with each other. It is something that we can also do if we're trying to explain to the state of Connecticut what we have embarked upon, what we have produced, and what it takes to actually provide that level of service to the state. And I think it's important that we do that.
Madam Chair, I'm getting a little confused. We have an agenda, we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. And I think at least I'm losing track of the discussions back and forth and their direct relevance to the motion at hand. Rich, is that correct?
Yeah, we are. No, the motion is on the floor, made, seconded, and open for discussion. What I think is the discussion.
The discussion has gone away from the motion, and I just want to make that
So
observation.
you're right. But out of respect,
So I know, Chair.
And it would be up to the
let's
chair
go
to
with-
correct it if the chair would want to correct that, if we're following Robert's rules.
Yeah. So if I may, I'll just say one final
The
thing.
chair of the meeting is Ms. Ryan.
You want to call it? Okay, I just want to make one final comment that understood that if there are details or again evidence that would counter our analysis or ask us to refine or revise certain things, then we're very open to looking at that. And many of the things that you noted, Dr. Susanker, are indirect costs. This effort is not applying for an NSF grant with line items of indirect costs that have been attributed. But if we want to do an analysis together, happy to, again, try to work with you and anyone you'd like to bring to the table to do that work. So thank you.
I believe, Regent Forth? No, Regent Bloom, I'm sorry. Did you have?
Thank you. I move the question.
Good call.
No.
Moving the question requires an immediate.
Not debatable.
I understand it. It's non-debatable.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. But, you know, if you would do me a favor and rescind that request, I'm sure we can move right along. I appreciate it. I just hate closing down debate on an issue. And I would ask you if you would do me that personal favor, rescinding that request.
I withdraw my motion.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? When you get your wish anyway. All those in favor of the resolution as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed, no for the record. Regent Stewart.
Thank you. The ayes have it. Resolution as amended is adopted. Just before I turn this back to you, Madam Chair, one of the thoughts I had is we have an articulation agreement. And when you were speaking, David, somewhere in the back of my mind from that young lady that commented, we need to update that articulation agreement. I think it's one of the things that will help us move forward, where we get students from the community colleges who wish to go into the universities and they know which end is up without having to lose credit and therefore money as they move forward. So I would think that one of the things we put in to look forward to in this whole process is updating that particular thing, the articulation agreement, to help our students in the community colleges. That's just a comment, and I hope we do that. Madam Chair, that's the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the Human Resource and Administration Committee. Holly, as chair, I don't believe there's any report. You don't want to say one more word?
I return my gavel to the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to go to the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee this month has 2 items before the board. The first concerns the establishing a new working title for President Chang. Before we open this up for discussion, I'd like to bring this item before the board as a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
There will be discussion now, and I believe Regent McCarthy, you have something to say?
This is it for the full board that, this isn't, I'm confused about, this is the switch to chancellor before we move into executive
Right,
session.
right.
Yeah. Yes, I'll be very brief. The desire on the part of the board, which has been discussed with the board since last October, has been to, I would say, rationalize the titles of senior leaders in the institution. I've taught organizational structure and organizational effectiveness at times, and one of the first things one looks at and teaches one's students to look at is the org chart. And if we are to look at the org chart of CSCU right now, we have the chief executive officer of the system is the president. Reporting to the president are the 4 presidents of the regional state universities and the president of Charter Oak and the president of Connecticut State. So we've got 6 presidents reporting to a president. As if that isn't enough confusion, if you move down a level, even with the transition to a single community college, we have 2 presidents, 2 sitting presidents of community colleges that as of July 1st will report to the president of the community college, who reports to the president of Connecticut State Colleges and Universities. if any one of my introductory students would have submitted this as part of their org chart, the grade would be the most generous, could be D minus. And it's certainly for people who are not involved, it's not a recipe for transparency and clarity. And if we need additional evidence for that, we can look at some of our fellow institutions just in the neighborhood, New York, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, all operate under a chancellor as the single CEO of their system, and presidents as the next level of their institutions. The one exception is in Massachusetts. The principle holds, but in Massachusetts, the president is the head of the system, and the campus directors have the title of chancellor. But the structure is the same. It's just an unusual. So I would very much like to support this resolution in the way for the purposes of clarity. And I believe the resolution states that what we're talking about here are titles and titles alone, and with the goal of clarity. And
Thank you. Thank you. David, please.
Yes, I'd like to break with tradition and speak in favor of this resolution. When I came to CCSU in 1989, I was quite pleased to receive a letter of appointment from John Schumacher, the president of CCSU. And about a few weeks later, I got another letter of appointment from another president, Dallas Beal of CSUC system, right? The acronyms are already becoming confusing. And it took me some time to straighten out in my mind. I spoke to one colleague and I said, "Oh, I see we've changed presidents here." He says, "No, it's John Schumacher." And so I had to go back home and say, "Well, it's Dallas Beal who has appointed me." So that confusion is legitimate. Secondly, there's precedent. When Bill Sebas became president of the CSU system, Rich Balducci will remember this. So we're going back to the early 1990s, the Stone Age, of course. And he fairly soon changed his title to that of Chancellor for exactly the reasons that are outlined in this resolution. So I would support that.
Thank you. Is there any other further discussion on this? If none, oh yes, Regent Stewart, please.
Sorry, I forget that I have to say something instead of just raise the hand. Sorry, I'm going to be a no on this resolution as well. I just think that given kind of all of the statewide discussion around the status of the institution, I just think that it doesn't send the right message to the state to do it at this point in time. I understand the rationale for it. I'm fully aware of that, but I just can't support it. Thank you.
Did you have more to add to that? Thank you. Any other further discussion? None will come to an immediate vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No, for the
Opposed?
record, Regent Stewart.
Abstentions? Resolution is adopted. Thank you. Congratulations, Chancellor. Next, we have the motion that was added to our agenda today, recognizing the consummation of the merger of the Connecticut Community Colleges. I'd like to ask the Secretary of the Board, Pam Helene, to read the resolution into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution dated June 28th, 2023 for the consummation of merger of Connecticut Community Colleges. Whereas the Board of Regents for Higher Education is the governing body for the regional community technical college system and is responsible for the development of the institutions within its jurisdiction. And whereas the Board of Regents, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, Section 10A-6, resolved to merge the 12 individual regional community technical colleges within the regional community technical college system into a singularly structured and accredited college with 12 campuses. Board Resolution 17-155. And whereas the Board of Regents resolved to submit a substantive change request to the New England Commission on Higher Education, NECHI, requesting accreditation of the single accredited college upon the merger of the 12 individually accredited regional community technical colleges. And whereas on May 14th, 2020, the Board of Regents authorized the merger of 12 individual regional community technical colleges into a single institution and named the successor institution Connecticut State Community College. And whereas the Connecticut State Community College is established to serve all of the geographical regions of the state as provided by Connecticut General Statute Section 10A-78, and whereas the New England Commission on Higher Education at its June 16th, 2023 meeting voted to grant initial accreditation to Connecticut State Community College effective July 1st, 2023. And whereas the Board of Regents and CSCU leadership expect the official letter from NECHI at the beginning of July 2023, providing accreditation for the Connecticut State Community College. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Regents consummates the merger of its 12 regional community technical colleges as Nantucket Community College, Capital Community College, Gateway Community College, Housatonic Community College, Manchester Community College, Middlesex Community College, Naugatuck Valley Community College, Northwestern Community College, Norwalk Community College, Quinnebog Valley Community College, Three Rivers Community College, and Tungus Community College to become a single college, Connecticut State Community College, an accredited institution within the constituent unit of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, effective July 1st, 2023. And be it further resolved that CT State, as the successor institution of the 12 regional community technical colleges, assumes all assets, liabilities, rights, and obligations of each of the legacy regional community colleges, community technical colleges, including but not limited to all contractual assignments. And be it further resolved that CT State President is the institution's chief executive officer and executive authority financially, contractually, academically, and administratively for all current and future campuses. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the responsibility to confer academic degrees contained in Section 10A-72 of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Board of Regents for Higher Education authorizes the CT State President or their designee to validate and award diplomas signifying the conferring by the board of the associate degree or certificate upon students who have completed requirements of programs approved by the Board of Regents and who have recommended for such degrees by the faculty of the college. I move that into the record.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we open this up for discussion, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve this item. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Yes, David.
Just a technical point. You also have to change the name of the Community Technical Colleges system, which is in the statute section 10A-8 to the Connecticut Community College. So that should have been in this motion, I think, because you do refer to that 10A-72. Secondly, I would have liked to have seen in the whereases, whereas the CT State expects to continue campuses and full services at each of the locations where previous community colleges exist. I think that would have been an important addition to this motion to assure the faculty and the students, and for that matter, the administrators, who have worked so hard at their various locations, that their work will not have been in vain and that the campuses will continue in those locations. That's an important thing, and I would like to have seen that added. So I state it here for the record.
Any other discussion? This will go to an immediate vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Resolution is adopted. Last item on the agenda is an executive session. Before I call for a motion to move to executive session, let me state the board will move to executive session for the purposes of discussing the appointment, employment, performance, evaluation, health, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. No votes will be taken in executive session. Additionally, there will be no discussion, action, or votes by the board following the executive session. The only action following the executive session will be a declaration of adjournment by the chair. Chancellor Chang is asked to join the regents in executive session. Therefore, allow me to call for a motion to move to executive session for the purpose as I have described and to adjourn by declaration of the chair when that discussion is in executive session concludes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The open portion of our meeting has concluded. The live streaming has been stopped. Thank you.